We are live.
Good evening, sir.
Good
evening.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor Sabia Mufti, Professor Shafi Saab.
Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Good evening.
Assalamu alaikum, Ji. How are you?
Fine, sir. Alhamdulillah. आप ठीक हैं, sir?
Ji. Must be very cold. Even in Aligarh, we are experiencing.
Yeah, it's not minus, of course, but nights we have -2, -3, -4.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's okay. We know how to live with it.
Yes.
With power breakdowns. With the power breakdowns as
and
well.
Right now at my home there is no power. It's going to come at 8, I think.
Same here. Same here.
Same there. We have to wait a half hour's power cut.
But you have a light of knowledge with you.
We can start now.
I can see that's all around.
Yes. The light of knowledge is very much there.
Thank
you need not physical light, do you? You don't.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we are going to start in a minute. I'll just wait for the moderator to tell me.
Yes.
She's, I think, waiting for. We have an attendance of 25 right now, which is not bad. And there are so many other people who are watching this on YouTube and Facebook and other channels.
Okay.
But for an interactive session, we have around 25 people right now.
Okay, that's wonderful.
So, sir, how is Aligarh? Aligarh also must be a bit cold this time.
Yes, it is very cold, and for us, it is a very biting cold. It is around 8 degree or 9 degree. So we find it extremely difficult to cope with it. And you people are accustomed to that. For you,
but we feel more cold outside.
Yes.
I feel it. I feel when I'm in Delhi during the winter time, December and January, I feel it's more cold as compared to Kashmir. Because probably in Kashmir we are psychologically, trained to deal with the cold. In Delhi you are not.
Okay, that makes the psychological.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
That makes a difference.
So, sir, how is the COVID situation in Aligarh? Last time you had a very bad time.
Still, right now it is not like that, but still we have every day we get around 250 or 300 cases reported
in Aligarh itself.
In Aligarh itself, but they are not. They don't need hospitalization and oxygen support. So that's why it is. One can live with that, and still we are holding online classes, and only 50% staff is supposed to be.
Hello.
Us.
We can start. Okay. Thank you. So I got the green signal from the moderator. I think she has the now all the panelists there.
Okay.
So I will have the honor to introduce the moderator of this session. First of all, on behalf of the Global Council for Educational Communication, the participants and the eminent panelists for this 36th day of our 75 days, 75 weeks of the concept record that is being created by the Global Council for Education Communication. As Vice President of this organization, on behalf of myself, on behalf of the President and the General Secretary, welcome you all to this 36th day. And today we have eminent panelists, of course, topped by our Professor Shafiq Kidwai Saab, who is not only a communication scientist, but an author and a senior professor at Aligarh Muslim University. We also have with us, I think he'll be joining us very soon. I can't see him here. Shri Rohit Kansal, who is an IAS officer, a well-known name in Kashmir, a household name rather. He is Principal Secretary to Govt Higher Education Department and Information Department in J&K, a very vibrant person, and it is good that he has been roped in for this particular session. So I welcome him also. We also have Daniel Hallen with us, who is a distinguished professor at Department of Communication from University of California, San Diego. He is also welcome here. And above all, I have my colleague, Professor Sabia Mufti, who will be the session chair for this session. Professor Sabia Mufti brings in with lot of research and the teaching experience of around 30 years with her. So Professor Sabia Mufti also welcome to this particular session. But my job is simply to, for this session to welcome you all briefly. And then my pleasant duty to introduce the moderator of this session. This session is being moderated by one of my students, in fact, one of my favorite students, Monisa Kadri, who did her PhD in mass communication from Kashmir University. She's a media educator and a communication enthusiast, teaches in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, and has been the former head of this particular department at Islamic University of Science and Technology in Kashmir. She also holds the position of university's first media advisor. So she's following the the footsteps of her teacher. I was media advisor to University of Kashmir for over a year, more than a year. She is now the first media advisor to the Vice Chancellor of the IUST, and is university's PR and heads the university's PR and media center. Her interests include film, social media, and her paper on films and religion has been kept as reading in syllabi of the prominent institutions, including Queen Mary University of London, Virginia Commonwealth University. She has also collaborated with Columbia Law School Clinic for a project on education. Ms. Kadri has been a Copenhagen Fellow, Florida International University in 2021, Bridge Institute of UK Kalinga Fellowship in 2021 and 2017. She has also been Commonwealth Professional Fellow in UK in 2019 and Indo-Global Social Science Media Fellow in 2012 and 13. She has also been a mentor and Commonwealth Scholarship Commission UK, and with the Emerging Scholars Network Program of IAMCR, she is the section editor for Fiction, Contemporary Literary Review India, and an editorial board member of international journals like ABR and Asia. Ms. Monisa, Dr. Monisa Kadri is a youth trainer on life skills and leadership. She has been a guest faculty at many institutions like NIFT India, and has delivered lectures at Central University of Jharkhand, IIMC, Academic Panganja Basha University in Malaysia, and DME Noida, and many other institutions, within and outside the valley. She is also a member of various editorial boards of journals, boards of studies of University of Kashmir, and nothing pleases me than to read a very good profile of Dr. Monisa Kadri, whom I still consider as a very young and vibrant student of mine, and definitely for a teacher, it's a matter of pride to introduce such a vibrant person who has made contribution to media, and brought knowledge to herself and the institution, and of course the teachers. So with these few words, I request Monisa Kadri to take this session forward and make the formal welcome address for our eminent panelists as well as the participants. Thank you, Professor Kadri.
Thank you so much, sir. Indeed, it is an honor for me only to be introduced by someone like you, who is, an acclaimed professional in all, in every field that you've been working in. And I really thank you for your kind words and your graciousness to be available with us today as the Vice President of the Global Media Education Council. And this conclave, it's a uniquely curated session that we have today, and it gives me all the more pleasure and all the more privilege to have all these, acclaimed panelists from diverse areas of specialization. And this event is organized. It is one of the longest, it is in fact the longest media conclaves of the world, and Global Communication Education Conclave is setting its own successful stories as it moves ahead. And on behalf of GMEC, I extend a warm welcome to everyone, to my panelists. Shri Rohit Kansal, who is the Principal Secretary to the Government of J&K, would be joining us shortly. I am really, really thankful to Professor Shafiq Idwai for gracing this session with his presence. I'm also thankful to Professor Daniel Holland, who would also be delivering the keynote address. And I'm so delighted to have my professor, my teacher, Professor Sabia Mufti with us. And she has graciously accepted my invite to chair the session. And I also welcome all the participants and attendees who are here to join the session and listen to this phenomenal panel that we're going to have, discuss the reimagining of new paradigm in media and communication in context of post-truth period, and also the contemporary scenario as we see COVID kind of expand and show its presence around us, and myriad perspectives concerning journalistic professionalism, significance of facts in media, and amidst the challenges that are thrown up by post-truth period. And there would also be insights on how citizen communication has been evolving during the times of pandemic. And we have a corporate speaker, Mr. Sagar Kaul, who would be talking about the role of technology and AI in fact-checking as we see the pandemic transform into an infodemic. Let me now invite the session chair, Professor Sabia Mufti. She's a professor at Media Education Research Center, University of Kashmir, and has exemplary academic and research experience of spanning around, over 3 decades. And as I said earlier, she's fortunately been my PhD supervisor and continues to be my mentor. I request ma'am to preside over the session. And Professor Mufti has multiple national and international research projects to her credit. She has conducted research for Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and worked on projects from Manipal Academy of Higher Education. She's also had a project from SEMCA and did a wonderful project with Hoot Media. Her book, Media and Its Audiences, A Rural Urban Study of Kashmir, is a landmark work on understanding audiences at the grassroots, and it draws insightful references from across this region and is kept in the libraries of media schools here. Ma'am, I request you to deliver the opening address and define the canvas for the session. Professor Mufti.
Thank you very much. A very warm welcome to everybody, and thank you very much to the Global Communication Organization for inviting me to this event today. I'm a little unwell, but it's a great opportunity to be getting this chance to speak to you all. I'll be a little brief in my speech because there's a lot to go ahead in the session. So thank you very much to the whole conclave for giving me an opportunity. Digital interaction and new ways of processing and interpreting information have brought forth a paradigm change in the communication scenario, and this has led to an entirely changed perspective of media per se. Studies in communication worldwide are proving that instead of using more systematic traditional media channels, practitioners are now switching to interactive, real-time strategic instruments connected with social media like blogs, Twitter, Facebook, etc. The big question here arises, how is all this impacting the structure of the content? This is the million-dollar question. Now, information does become referential, but multiple questions arise here. Can information be altered and distorted, or be shaped by contextual perceptions, or disrupted by environmental factors? Now, when I say contextual perceptions, these contextual perceptions could be the controllers of the media, the people who finance the media, or the environmental factors could be the political environment or the state and the non-state actors who are very instrumental in bringing about changes in the media scenario as we are seeing in the whole subcontinent at present. Now, can we really frame a reality through the media? Can we pack the content in a certain way to be able to program a specific response? For instance, we create a mindset that the power center wants, but the power center has its own agenda. But then where does the agenda setting function of the media go? And what is the role of the audience? A lot of researchers on the audience contemporarily have proved that the audience today is at crossroads because media, a favorite of everybody, is today becoming a big question mark is being posed before the media, that media is not becoming so much of a credible source of news as it has always been. Now, can we change the perceptions on a given topic? These are multiple questions that arise, not just for me as a media researcher, but these are the questions I gather from the grassroots because I'm running around all through the terrains, the mountains and the deserts and the cities and the villages, trying to meet audiences and analyze media content and see how audiences perceive what media say. Is it all possible or credible to provide different versions of truth, which switch from black to white or from penalty to reward? One agency says this is to be rewarded, another agency says that it is to be penalized. Now we are actually looking for where is the truth, or better said, who is right and who is wrong. It seems that we are mapping a postmodern definition of representation. I mean, how is media representing reality? And what actually is the reality? How is it being framed? Now, especially in the era of the post-truth, we can see that there is a logical manifestation of post-modernity, wherein the idea is the truth and fact are relative. Now, this is becoming part of the public discourse. The whole public discourse is confused. The agenda setting function of media is undergoing a paradigm change. We've been seeing media setting the agenda for public discourse. But what we are seeing now is that priming and framing, these are huge functions of the media. But framing and priming is done and made use of in a very colossal manner by vested interests, state actors, backstage players, non-stage actors, and they are all playing their pivotal roles. More so, in the pandemic and the infodemic, we have dated with startling events. In our recent memory, we had the migrant labor we had the migrant labor crisis and its reportage through the media, and how it all went, how it all was reported, and what confusing signals it sent all over. Then we had the Marcus reportage, how confusing it was, and how there were polarized versions of the whole reality through different media. Now we have these multi-layered reportages at the local, at the regional, at the national, and the international level. And what does the audience member, how does he filter what is to be accepted and what is to be rejected? Now, we had another crisis of the oxygen cylinders and the health crisis relating to the pandemic in May this year. And there have been a lot of other events pertaining to political reportage and hundreds of other events leading to the panchayats and the political reportage and the economic reportage and so many things. Now, And all this has created a big question mark about the actual functioning of the media. But the media is there, the media will be there, whether it is the pre-truth era, the post-truth era, or the truth era. The big question is objectivity, the credibility of the media has to be sustained. And it is for us media professionals and media researchers to see that media function in the most credible manner, and the media functions of agenda setting, priming, and framing, which are the order of the day, which is the latest functioning of the media. It is made to function. Media is made to function. The agenda are set in the most positive manner, and priming and framing is done in the most logical manner. I hope in this era where lot and lot is being said and lot is being interpreted, we are able to make the best use of media. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor. I think you've actually set the session in its own pace by mentioning the critical instances that signify the role of media in contemporary times. And now to honor somebody who we all look upon as an inspiration, and he has been performing his job or duty as a media stalwart in his career of over 3 decades. We have an eminent media stalwart, Professor Shafi Kidwai, and it's an honor for the Global Media Education Council to felicitate him and honor him with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And this aspect of our conclave, in which we honor our media stalwarts and people who have contributed to media education and communication education, is something that gives us a sense of satisfaction. And somebody like Professor Shafi Kidwai, who is an acclaimed bilingual critic, he is a reviewer, he's a translator, he's a historian of Urdu journalism, and has been teaching communication studies, critical theories, and print media for, as I said, over 3 decades at Aligarh Muslim University, and has been a regular at most of the prestigious literary festivals around. And he has held several key positions at the university as well. His latest book, Sir Said Ahmed Khan, Reason, Religion and Nation by Routledge in 2020, has received widespread critical acclaim and appreciation. I still get to read a lot of reviews every now and then about the book. He's got Sahitya Akademi Award for his work on Sir Said Ahmed Khan in 2019. He has published over 10 books in Urdu and English, including Urdu Journalism and Literature, Critical Perspectives by Cambridge University Press in 2014, Cementing Ethics and Modernism, and Appraisal of Sir Said's periodicals, Role of Maulana Azad's periodicals in National Awakening, and few more books. And one of the most important works on Urdu journalism actually comes from him, which is Khabar Nigari, which dates back to 1988. He has also received the prestigious literary award Iqbal Samman in 2017 by the MP government, and Uttar Pradesh Urdu Academy has also given him Khusro Award in 2018. Professor Kidwai reviews and writes articles regularly, which appear in publications of national importance. He writes on Indian literature, and it also includes publications like The Hindu, Hindustan Times, Frontline, and other significant publications. And he frequently writes also for many Urdu journals. And now, to felicitate him, may I request the chair of this session to kindly say a few words and honor Sir. And after that, we would play the felicitation video. Ma'am.
Most welcome, Professor Shafi Kidwai. It's been a great honor to be in this session along with you. I have heard a lot, read a lot, although I've not worked with you, but I have shared a lot of researches with you, and I've been fortunate enough that some of my researches have been examined by you. So yes. It's a great event. It's a great event to share this opportunity and have you with us. And felicitations to you. Lots and lots of felicitations to you. We welcome you to this session, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. May I invite Professor Shafiq Qidwai to deliver his special address. He would be speaking about a fact-free world and media, and he would be looking at context of challenges thrown up during the post-truth period. Over to you, sir.
Monisa, before you do that, Professor
yes,
Qidwai,
yes,
I
sir, please,
think
Shahid,
this
sir.
is a rare honor for all of us at Global Council for Education for Media Educational Council, that you accepted this honor from us. In fact, you have honored us by accepting this. And for me, I think it's a privilege and an honor to be present when it was being done. So congratulations on behalf of all of us. And since we are looking forward to you for the guidance always, and you have been, guiding all of us. So for us, it's a rare honor that we are here when you are being honored. So thank you very much for accepting it, the honor. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I grow for words. It rarely occurs that I grow for words to express my deep sense of gratitude to Global Media Council and Dr. Shahid Rasool and Professor Sabia Mufti and Dr. Morisa Qadri. I don't know whether all of you three are poets or not, but you have what you have uttered about me. It sounds that all of you are poets, or at least poet in the making. Because whatever you said about me, I wonder if anything related to me is right. And I'm thankful to Dr. Morisa Qadri for producing such a wonderful video. And first of all, yes, Professor Sabia Mufti set the ball rolling, and he discussed many points related to post-truth and many things related to media education, and some very important topics he talked about. So I'm here. I just discussed with Dr. Morisa Qadri that I would be talking to post-truth. What post-truth or fact-free period? There's a fact-free period. So we would be, you see, the extensive work and research has been going on, and you find a lot of debate on the post-truth or fact-free for the last, I think, many years. But we are, as far as theoretical basis is concerned, what is the theoretical position or theoretical framework or its epistemological work? I think there's not much work has been done. There are some references are there, but I try to locate it. What post-truth is? Who imagined it? Isn't it? I think the first person who talked about it, this is the way back in 1949 when all of you know Orwell's book was published, 1984, in which there is a Ministry of Truth. And you see, there is a contrarian view. There's a Ministry of Truth, and it was meant for manufacturing lies and propaganda and many things like that. In which the main character is Winston. He does this sort of thing. So there is a very huge building. There is a Ministry of Peace, and its job is to wage a war. So there are so many ministries talked about. It's a dystopian novel. We talk about utopian novel. We imagine something, but dystopian means that it is the other way around of utopia. We imagine the world is bad, but how bad is we cannot express. What we think about world, how bad it is, or how harmful it is. And it is more than that. Then we say it is a dystopian world. And Orwell talked about, say, 1949. Now it is coming true for the last, I think, 15 years or 10 years. It is happening like that. So he talked about the Big Brother and surveillance society and Ministry of Truth. Ministry of Truth, from where the post-truth emerges. So that's the basic concept. There is a Ministry of Peace that concerns itself with the war. The Ministry of Truth that deals with lies. The Ministry of Love that deals with torture, and the Ministry of Penalty with starvation. So it is a very contradictory situation he talked about. And this post-truth is like that, isn't it? What is the phenomenon? Now the basic issue, the Sabia Mufti talking about the agenda, media agenda setting role. But I think the first and the foremost question is the media. The educator, the person who teaches media for the last many years, our job is how might we restore the twin notion, fact and reality, to the public discourse. I think this is the basic question we have to talk about. Yes, everybody is entitled to have its own opinion, but nobody is entitled to have its own sets of facts. And not this is here the media falters. Yes, for opinion is all right. Yes, you can form your opinion. Perfectly all right, but you have your own sets of fact. It is a question that for the last, I think, 5 years, 10 years, it has been debated. Now it is opinion. Yes, opinion is there. Yes, you have. And apart from this, I would say that Orwell, there are Michael Foucault talked about the power structure and power that be, how in his lectures he talks about, and I would refer to as its theoretical positions, and from where we get insight to understand the phenomena of post-truth that refers to Hannah Arendt. He talked about the rational truths, and two sets of truths she talked about, and it is of great importance to understand rational truths, and he talked about the factual truth. Rational truth, its opposition is not lie. It is opinion or your error or maybe your interpretation. It may be all right. It is a philosophical, scientific truth. But factual truth, it is something that is there. So your opinion is different. But here you see there's since the beginning or since the dawn of civilization, there's a lot of lies and distortion and so many things are dissembling. Things were there. But it gains new respectability for the last, I think, 15 years. So that's what is the role of media? Media, what is the job of a media? Earlier, because we no longer ask questions, especially I'm talking about the Indian media, it just provides answers. You don't want to question. You see, if the person is saying something and you don't question him. So that's why it gets respectability all over the world. Suppose some very important person, in Orwellian concept, I would say the big brother is saying something. So your job is just report it. His presence or his utterance, give the credence, because you don't probe it, you don't investigate it, you just produce it. He said, or she said. This kind of, it's not journalism, it is just journalism talked about, and it is there because you are not there to question. So that's why new respectability comes up. So that's why we know that this is something which is not right. Something that Oxford University Press defines, Oxford Dictionary defines what is post to this. Just its definition says it means that what is the fact or what is the reality. But you are swayed by, you are carried away by your emotions. Facts are contrary, but what you believe, it is something different. So that it happens, I think, way back when the Saddam Hussein was persecuted, that he had the weapons of mass destruction, and the whole world was convinced, and you know what happened there, and the people, they realized, but the damage was done. So it was not the stray example earlier. Before that the Iranian plane was shot down. So and it was a civilian plane, and apology is still awaited. So this is because we got this kind of thing, the political, because somebody is saying where the authority to make the announcement or something like it, a very powerful person. And the media, for the many years, the media, especially I'm talking about the Indian media, so I think it's applicable everywhere, but India, it become very, very important that we no longer ask questions. We don't question it, and what is there, we just put it. So this is it gains new respectability. We know that nothing will change, and the people, they are making, the politicians, they are making big promise, and you no longer ask question. You think, and it is there, and it is there. So the post-truth is like that. It is a new kind of phenomena when it is the media is no longer, as we know, the media is no longer mirrors life or mirrors the external world. It creates its own reality. You know what happened in India? You see, there was no story or no very, very trivial thing that Sushant Rajput suicide that was put on air for I think more than 2 or 3 months, and the people they were dying of hunger. That was the real story. But you are saying something else, so you are creating your own reality. Reality is, that's why we know it is a reality. Is Dr. Sabia Mufti talking about is a relative concept. Yes, reality is what? It does not descend from the heaven. It is created by language just to fulfill our culture needs. All right, it is a relative thing, but there are so many concrete things are there. So the media here the media falters, especially I'm talking about the Indian media, especially the electronic media. Whatever it just tries is there. So it looks like the Indian society is just Big Brother, what Orwell predicted way back. So that's why you see that there's a Ministry of Truth I was just talking about. It has it has a very huge building having more than 3,000 rooms, and three slogans were written. War is peace, isn't? So you see that this is a contradiction. They say that the three slogans were there. Three slogans were pasted. So war is peace. So this is what you think, what you pretend, and what you do, it is something different. So this kind of dichotomy is there. So this is the new phenomena, and many people they talk about, but still the agenda setting role is there. So I'm afraid it is just wishful thinking that media still calls the shots, it sets the ball rolling. No, it is the other way around in the corporate world, or it is the you can say political part that dictates the thing. So we don't set the agenda, and especially in India, it is not. Media has no role. There are so many. Media means media means the anchors or the people that present the program. They said it is not the debate that is related to public discourse, or the public. They're largely related to that. So it is new kind of thing. We try to create some kind of fight-like situation, and everything has got, apart from the political engagement, and there is no room for another kind of perspective. There is a one single narrative we try to push in, and we just try to absorb the part that be of all sins. So that's why what is saying, it is all right, and it has to be presented, and there's no room for another kind of perspective. So subjectivity, what you say, but what the reality is, I know that it is a relative thing, but what is concrete thing is going on, what is there, but it is not being debated. So this is, and again, new respectability. Everybody is just carried away by it. We know Achhe Din will never come. You see, it will not then, and your account will not be credited with, say, lakhs of rupees, but still you go by it, and still you vote for it, and the media is not there to question it. This is it, and we try to like that. Another thing is not only the reality, the society or the part that be, or the powerful people, they try to revisit the history. So that's why they try not only to control the future, control the moment, but the history and the past. And they always try, the media, especially in India, they try to glorify, future, and they think the past is your future. The part that be, especially in India, they try to just realize the point, or just hammer the point that your past is your future. Past can never be your future. Past can be a resource, but still this is a very, very emotive issue. We try to put it like that. So as far as so many, I think that writers, they talk about the Orwellian truth, the concept of Orwellian and Foucault, and Hundred talked about the rational truths and the factual truths. No, rational truths, it's all right. It were there, you can defy it. It's no harm it. But it's a new kind of phenomena. When you try to, what is the factual truths, you just prefer it. Instead of putting it, you think something that appeals to your emotions, something you are carried away by your emotions, and it is like that. So this is the basic issue, and I think the job of as a communicator, our job is to restore how we could restore the twin notions of reality and reality and fact. What is the fact and what is the reality, and how to protect it, and how to protect. We are no longer guided by the public interest. There are so many vested interests. I think in the presidential remarks, Dr. Sabiha Mufti does talk about. So this is the world we live in. So what is post-truth is whether it is we are into that, or it is over, or it is a fact-free world. I won't comment, but it's still post-truth is a crystallization of a larger trajectory of devaluing truth in public discourse. This is I think it is a crystallization of devaluing truth in public discourse. In public discourse, truth holds no respectability. It is a relative thing, but over the years, The media was instrumental in doing so. So this is the issue we have to talk about. I was asked to speak, I think, only 10 minutes. I think I just exceeded my time. And thank you very much again, Dr. Munisa Kazri and Dr. Sabia Mufti and Dr. Shahid Rasool for their kind words. They uttered, and I'm thankful to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was really wonderful to listen to you and kind of dissect all the dimensions that are required to look at how media is shaping the truth and how audiences are responding to that by using all the critical examples that you had to share. We have someone with us all the way from San Diego, and let me now introduce our keynote speaker for the session, Professor Daniel C. Holland. He is the distinguished professor at the Department of Communication, University of California. And I am really, really honored and really grateful to him for being so kind and generous that he accepted the invite right away, and he's joined us quite early from there. It's early morning, actually. All of us at GMEC are honored to have you with us, and we as students of communication are really waiting to listen to you, sir. Personally speaking, the Uncensored War, Media and Vietnam has been one of my key references during my PhD. So thank you so much for your work. Professor Holland, his research concerns journalism, political communication, and the comparative analysis of media systems, which has been his recent area of focus, and numerous books on these areas are there. Latest being Transcending the Medical Media Opposition in Research on Media Coverage of Health and Medicine, Media, Culture and Society, which is in press currently. He has written extensively on media and war, including Vietnam, Central America, and the Gulf War. He has written on television coverage of elections, demonstrating the shrinking sound bite and offering an interpretation of its meaning for political journalism. Most recently, he has been doing research on health and medical reporting and mediatization of health and medicine. And he's been working with the Berkeley anthropologist Charles Briggs. Which is, I think, this area is contemporary, and this area is all the more relevant currently as we see in the backdrop of COVID. Today, he would be speaking about journalistic professionalism in the post-truth age. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Professor Kadri. Thanks for organizing this great event. Greetings to everybody in India. Yes, as you hear, I'm speaking from San Diego early in the morning. It's a holiday here. It's Martin Luther King Day in the United States. Can I share my screen? Is this working? Can you see my screen here?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
And okay, so it has been common since about the 1960s today to say that we live today in the age of information. This book by Daniel Bell, The Coming of Post-Industrial Society, was one of the first to put forward that idea of the age of information. And it was commonly assumed in discourses about the age of information that the transformation of information and communication technologies would essentially spread enlightenment, spread knowledge and scientific ways of thinking that would facilitate progress and human liberation around the globe. Today, we see a much darker vision of the Enlightenment age, in which forms of misinformation spread widely through the new media channels, often promoting social conflict, reinforcing hierarchies of power, and undermining social solidarity and effective action in face of common threats like the current pandemic and climate change. One of my PhD students, Olga Lazitsky, once a journalist in Russia and now studying alternative professional journalism in Russia, coined the term media endarkenment to refer to this phenomenon, which we see, I think, in many different forms around the world. This situation has many different kinds of causes. The role of political leaders, often populist leaders, in the current era, and also of media owners who are able to exploit misinformation to pursue power and profit, is certainly central in many contexts. But there are also bottom-up factors related, I think, to different forms of social marginalization and the failure of our political and economic systems to address it. So the solutions would have to be complex. But I would like to focus on one phenomenon important in our field of media and journalism studies that I think is necessarily a part of any possible solution to this problem, and that is journalistic professionalism. What do I mean by journalistic professionalism? In some ways, the concept is problematic. Journalism in many ways does not fit the model of the classic professions like medicine, law, architecture, because its practice is not based on a systematic body of knowledge that requires extensive formal training. But I do think that it is meaningful to speak of journalistic professionalism. And I want to make it clear that I mean this in a relatively strong sense. By professionalism, I don't mean merely technical competence. That is part of professionalism, but the concept refers much more broadly to the social role of journalism. In comparing media systems, Paolo Mancini and I offer a definition of journalistic professionalism in terms of three elements. The first is autonomy, that is the ability of journalists to make decisions within their sphere of confidence without outside interference. This autonomy is always relative, never absolute, and it is collective, not individual. News organizations always have hierarchies and what we call in the United States checks and balances that are part of the system of professional discipline. But where journalistic professionalism is strong, authority over journalistic decisions is primarily exercised by people within the profession, by journalists themselves. The second element is consensus on ethics and standards of practice, standards of what constitutes good journalism that are distinct to the profession. And where journalistic professionalism is strong, these have significant priority over political alignments and other more particular interests. And finally, the third element of professionalism is an ideology of public service. That is an ideology which, if professionalism is strong, will be accepted by journalists, media managers, and other actors in society that holds that journalism has an obligation to serve the society as a whole. Journalistic professionalism in this sense is difficult to institutionalize, but it was consolidated fairly strongly in many of the countries Mancini and I studied during the second half of the 20th century, in countries in North America and particularly Northern Europe. And it played an important role in the relative political stability and democratic health of those countries in that era. And it has been achieved, I believe, in more uneven but very real ways in many parts of the world, and remains an important aspiration of journalists, I think, almost everywhere in the world. Journalistic professionalism never solved all the problems related to the social role of journalism. And in fact, the first generation of the tradition of sociology and political economy of news, which arose in Western countries starting in the 1970s, which was a high point of journalistic professionalism, was centrally concerned with the critique of journalistic professionalism, trying to show how power relations and forms of inequality and exclusion came to be embedded in the very professional routines of journalism. Or to take another example of more recent scholarship from the Global South, Afonso de Albuquerque, a scholar in Brazil, shows how conceptions of professionalism imported into Brazil from the United States served to discipline journalism in the period of Brazil's right-wing military dictatorship and to facilitate the control of the dictatorship over journalism. It is also important to note that journalistic professionalism can take different forms. This is a key argument that Mancini and I make in comparing media systems to try to show that even among Western countries, journalistic professionalism took different forms. In particular, we argue in that book that while in the United States, the objectivity norm, that is the idea that journalists should be politically neutral and write without a distinctive voice or point of view, was dominant. In Europe, where the tradition of the party press was stronger, and there was a widespread assumption that all news organizations did have a distinctive point of view, and that was part of their function. The objectivity norm was less central to the way that journalistic professionalism was understood. Nevertheless, these components of autonomy, consensus on ethics and standards of practice, and the ideology of public service, those were very strong in both systems. Conceptions of professionalism do change also. Europe moved in the direction of the objectivity norm as the party press died out. And in the United States today, there are very interesting debates going on among journalists about rethinking the objectivity norm, motivated both by the way that Trump, as president, undermined the traditional relations between journalists and public officials, and by the broad protests against systemic racism that were associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. Here, I'd like to give a couple of quotations that give an idea of what this discussion looks like. These are from the journalist Wesley Lowery, who wrote a very influential article in the New York Times in 2020 in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement. Lowery wrote, "Conversations about objectivity, rather than happening in a virtuous vacuum, habitually focus on predicting whether a given sentence, opening paragraph, or entire article will appear objective to a theoretical reader who is invariably assumed to be white." And he went on not to suggest abandoning journalistic professionalism, certainly, but to rethink it. And he argued, and so instead of promising our readers that we will never on any platform betray a single bias, submitting ourselves to a life sentence of public thoughtlessness, a better pledge would be an assurance that we will devote ourselves to accuracy, that we will diligently seek out the perspectives of those with whom we personally may be inclined to disagree, and that we will be just as sure to ask the hard questions of those with whom we're inclined to agree. So this conversation, I think, is in many ways addressing the limitations of journalistic professionalism that have been studied since the 1970s, and represent an attempt to strengthen it, to deepen it, to make it more inclusive. And this is something, and I think that the kinds of issues that Lowery raises in the context of the United States have their parallels everywhere in the world. One of the issues that I want to raise here is the question of whether journalistic professionalism is a Western thing. And I think it's obvious that the dominant forms of journalistic professionalism originated in Western countries. And as Afonso de Albuquerque's work suggests, you can't ignore colonialism and the context of global power relations in thinking about the development of journalism around the world. But I would also say that journalistic professionalism is an aspiration of journalists in much of the world, and I think continues to be developed in distinct ways in different national contexts and remains very important almost everywhere. I study Latin America, and I would say that many of the strongest examples of journalistic professionalism today, often you find them in online media. This is the online news organization El Faro in El Salvador. Often these examples of journalistic professionalism in Latin America have a fairly strong activist orientation towards social change and social justice. This particular issue of El Faro is focusing on a water law. It says the water law privatizes and promotes commercial exploitation, and it's quite a critical article. So it has this kind of activist focus on social change and social justice. To give an interesting contrasting case, my student Olga Lazitsky, who I mentioned, finds that in Russia, where the dominant media are highly politicized, journalists aspiring to a more professional role often actually adopt the objectivity norm, because in the Russian context, it is a challenge to the dominant order to adopt the stance that journalists should step back from politics and just tell people honestly what happened in the world. One question I consider particularly interesting is whether journalistic professionalism could exist in communist systems like China or Vietnam. Some people, both inside and outside of those systems, would say no, but I'm not so sure. If journalistic professionalism could develop substantially in Western systems where media are privately owned, which involves very real contradictions between the system of private ownership and that obligation of the media to serve society as a whole, I'm not sure that it couldn't also develop in systems where media are owned by the party state. Of course, it would be a different form of professionalism from what we see in the United States or Europe. There's a very interesting work by Natalia Rudakova on journalism in the Soviet Union, which suggests that a form of professionalism did exist in the Soviet system, one that was centered particularly around an ideology of public service, and then which declined after the end of the Soviet Union. Now I'll move to wrap up because my time is relatively short. I don't know whether we have any time for questions, but journalistic professionalism faces many threats today. Sometimes these come in the more traditional form of repression by authoritarian leaders. The news organization I showed you in El Salvador, for example, El Faro, has been in the news recently because it's been the target of electronic surveillance using the Pegasus software created by an Israeli company, and which is used by many governments around the world to spy on journalists. As part of a campaign of repression. So there's traditional authoritarian repressions of that sort, and there are new threats that are part, I would say, of the information age itself. This includes economic problems that have undermined the stability of many traditional news organizations, and it also includes the threats that come from populist leaders who attack the credibility of journalists. And I would say in some ways, in many ways, the very notion of truth, often using social media, characterizing the journalists as enemies of the people. And as well as, I think that a threat comes more broadly from the political polarization that is generated by these discourses and by the attacks of populist leaders. And I think the threats to journalism also include the threat from media organizations themselves that reject professionalism to pursue political projects, often again of a populist character, as in the case of Fox News and other even more radical news organizations in my own country. However, just to conclude here, I would say that the importance of journalistic professionalism has never been more clear than in this age of misinformation, when societies around the world are facing incredible challenges, including things like racism and inequality, the pandemic, climate change. And I believe that strengthening the institutions and culture that support journalistic professionalism is essential to protecting the resiliency of our societies. And with that, I will conclude.
Thank you so much, Professor, for delivering the keynote address. I think looking at media systems in comparative manner is, I think, the right way to kind of build the professional sense amongst the journalists. And howsoever it is happening right now, the media, how it's working right now, the need for professionalism is all the more increased, and more so in the post-truth scenario. Thank you so much again. We now will listen to Mr. Sagar Kaul. Mr. Sagar Kaul is our corporate speaker for the evening, and he is the Vice President of operations at Logically. Logically is it combines advanced AI with one of the world's largest dedicated fact-checking teams to help governments, businesses, and public uncover and address harmful misinformation and deliberate disinformation, which is really, really required today. Before Logically, he has been a dialogue facilitator at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. He's been a co-founder of MetaFact, a news editor at News Zulu Limited, and he's also been a director editorial with First Person News and has worked with Barcroft Media. Sagar would be speaking about fact checking, and he'll focus more on infodemic, how there's a need to cross check and identify the misinformation that has been happening of late in a tremendous manner. And he's the best expert we could hear on the topic. Thank you so much for joining. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Moniza, and thank you for having me out here. It's a privilege listening to all the eminent speakers talking about what needs to be done in order to have our media ecosystem fixed up. Someone that comes from the background of fact-checking and technology, I would start my talk by quoting what Professor Kidwai said, and that was that everyone is entitled to their opinion, but they can't be entitled to their own facts. And as an organization, as a company that works on technology to identify misinformation, that works on providing news media houses with tools to fact check, I think this is one of our core principles that we abide by, and that is that we all might have our own biases. We might believe in certain things, but then when we are working on the desk, when we are looking at content, when we are looking at misinformation and the content that is coming our way, our responsibility doubles up. We cannot have our biases seep into our fact checks. And I think this is one of the core principles that any fact-checking organization in this world is going to abide by. Having said that, I would also like to mention, which I always keep on saying, is I don't think that fact-checking is any different from how a journalist reports their news. The core is that either a journalist, either a fact-checker, until unless you have not verified your facts, you have not churned that data that is coming your way, you are not going to submit your report, or we won't submit our fact check. We have completed 2 years of this pandemic, and if we just go back and see at the scale and the deluge of misinformation that was spread, it makes you see the loopholes that we have in our existing media ecosystem, that is especially news, and it gives you an opportunity to think that how going forward can these loopholes be filled. One of the things that we at Logically are trying to do at this point is having sort of partnerships wherein we can have legacy news media houses, we can have journalism schools and research institutes have partnerships with industry experts like Logically, wherein we are trying to come up with tools that is going to identify misinformation at scale. But in order for us to do that in a proper way and making sure that our machine learning pipelines are not biased, that our AI tool is not biased, we need help and support from people that are already working in this ecosystem, so that whatever use cases come our way, we are able to make that translate into our pipelines and the tool performs better. But at the same time, what this pandemic has shown us is that there needs to be an updation in the curriculum and the way journalism is being taught to students. There needs to be this implementation wherein students need to understand how to leverage these cutting-edge technologies that companies like ours and other globally are working on, and how do we get that into our day-to-day reporting, and identifying how are we able to distinguish between factually correct piece of content, factually correct piece of information that is coming our way. How do we churn out large data sets? Because when we talk about online media, when we talk about news in today's environment, as Professor Daniel said, that it's an ecosystem that is being hibernated in online space. So that means anyone with an internet connection, a social media account, can come up with a piece of content which does not need to come from, let's say, legacy media. So every person has an opportunity to become a journalist. And that's where I feel that institutes like, organizations like, who are into journalism training and all, needs to ramp up their work, need to have more sort of partnerships wherein, we can have industry experts working together with research institutes, with journalism schools, at least. I'll keep it really short. I know we have some more eminent speakers coming up. Thank you for my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really brief. It was really concise. But as you correctly said, following your lead, in fact, there should have been no need for fact checking, particularly in journalism, and it should have been at the core. Thank you so much, Mr. Kaul. Our next speaker is someone who's accomplished not just as an administrator, but also at every other level. Shri Rohit Kansal, who is the Principal Secretary to the Government of J&K and heads the Information and Higher Education departments. He's a senior civil servant, and he belongs to the batch 1995 of IAS. He's also been the official spokesperson of the government in his over 2 decades long career in public service. He has held multiple challenging public policy assignments in diverse sectors, and he has been keenly involved in policy framework and ambition on different levels. He's best known for initiating and implementing the very successful and innovative Back to Village program in J&K, and has found a mention not just in the radio broadcast Man Ki Baat, but also during the Independence Day speech of the Prime Minister. In 2014, when the worst floods hit Kashmir Valley, he actually led the relief process significantly, and it has been highly acclaimed. He's also lectured at various institutions across the world in countries like Japan, Cambodia, Australia, and others. And besides this, he has been an Emerging Leaders Fellow of Australia India Institute at the University of Melbourne, as well as a Fellow at the London School of Economics, London. He is a Fellow of the 3rd generation Ananta Aspen Kamal Nayan Bajaj Fellowship and member of Aspen Global Leadership Network. Shri Kansal has been kind enough to accept the invite, and he would be speaking about communicating with citizens during the pandemic, and also look at the communication that could help create effective governance model. So.
Thank you, Dr. Kadri, and thank you so much. I think I'm uniquely privileged to be among such a distinguished group. To begin with, I'm fascinated with the idea of GMEC and its concept of 75 years of India's independence. I was reading the papers that you sent me. 75 years, 75 speakers, 75 days. And I think as we approach the 75th anniversary of India's independence, it is time for us to look back at where we have reached, what we have achieved, and what is yet that remains undone. I remember around 10 years ago, Dr. C.K. Prahlad, who was probably then at Columbia, he came out with this concept of India and at 75 and exhorted all of us Indians to look at what are the things that India needs to do. And as we move into the next millennium, I think this is one important landmark, and I'm really glad that you have taken it up in your own way to move forward in this direction. I've been privileged to hear so many experts in the field of media. Well, I'm just a humble learner. I have absolutely no formal exposure to media, but then as I hear Dr. Kidwai talking about post-truth, or Dr. Hallian talking about professionalism, or even Mr. Kaul talking about fact-checking, I realize that while professionalism professionalism and the sanctity of truth is extremely important. And as George Orwell would have said, all men are equal, but some are more equal than others. And this stinging dystopian work, Animal Farm, which he followed up with his equally stinging and prescient work titled 1984, I think, which we are seeing it in its full fruition and today, and we are seeing the prescience of George Orwell in that monumental work. But we also realize how new journalism has to marry the age-old sanctity of truth and the need for professionalism with an equally important need to embrace the new technologies, so that while we are with our professional attributes on one hand, we also embrace all the new technologies to further embellish and empower what are the basic tenets of journalism. I think it's a paradox of our time that while the flow of information has never been greater than it is today, but the need for credibility and the need to establish the truth has also never been greater as it is today. And I think these two paradoxes lie uneasily with each other. As I said, I'm no professional, I'm no expert, but, I have been looking at things, so to say, from the other side of the table. And in particular, the past 2 years in which the COVID pandemic has been ravaging all of us, I was looking at a very interesting research paper which was done by Professor Shamika Ravi and another on media in the COVID period. And I was amazed to actually the concept of media and collaboration with the state are in a sense oxymoronic, because I think it is the job of the media to question the state, and it is the job of the media to pose hard questions to the state. But when it comes to situations like the situation of pandemic, I think there is a paradigm shift in the sense that you need a far more collaborative and symbiotic existence. And in this paper by Professor Shamika Ravi and others that I'm talking about, she does some very interesting research, and she says that just before the COVID second phase, media attention was diverted from COVID-19 topics to all other topics, including farmers' protests, elections, entertainment, cricket matches, etc. And very interestingly, the COVID pandemic is cyclical in nature. It is cyclical in nature because you have a high pandemic incidence. A high pandemic incidence is accompanied by an onslaught in the media, which leads to a fall in the number of cases, which leads to reduced media attention, and which leads to higher number of cases. So quite logically, the need for the highest media attention arises in the period when the number of cases are at an end, at their lowest. This might actually seem paradoxical and counterintuitive, but given the nature of the pandemic, the need for a media onslaught is just before a wave begins to set in, because that is what will prevent the wave from taking over. But unfortunately, as this research shows, it happened just the opposite. And while there has been a lot of literature on what government did or did not do, there has been very little literature on how the media could have performed more effectively in a period just leading to the pandemic, thereby maybe reducing the incidence to some extent. There is also the issue of the tragedy of the commons here, because it's in that sense a common good, and where it's very difficult for all the media outlets to act in unison. I would just like to quote a few instances of how we in Jammu and Kashmir were able to handle the communication far more effectively than some of our colleagues in the other parts of the country. I think a situation like a pandemic or a disease or some other problem which besets the whole of a territory is an occasion when the state with the capital S has actually to lead the communication effort, and all the media outlets have to act in a sort of collaborative ecosystem. This is not to say that they give up the role of questioning of the government, but as I said, if there was ever a need of some kind of collaboration between the state and its agencies and the different media agencies, it is in situations like this. And I dare say that we were able to achieve a very high degree of credibility, a very high degree of communication with all our constituents in so far as our communication during the COVID period was concerned. Not only were we able to put out credible figures, we were also, through use of traditional, non-traditional and other media, also alert the people, alert the public at large to the various facets of the COVID pandemic. And it is perhaps a result of that communication that not only were we among the best performers, whether it is in terms of testing, whether it is in terms of tracking, whether it is in terms of alerting, and now in terms of vaccination, when Jammu and Kashmir probably leads the entire country or is among the top few performers in the entire country, and communication has had an extremely good role to play in this. The only last point I would like to make before I conclude, that other than the traditional warning, alerting, disseminating of information efforts, which we did as a part of our media outreach efforts, there was a very successful program which those of you who are plugging in from Jammu and Kashmir would recognize, which is a program called Sukoon. Now, Sukoon was a program which actually means be at peace, which we started on behalf of the information department in the government of Jammu and Kashmir, which brought a series of webinars to the people dealing on all aspects of the pandemic, and not just medical aspects of the pandemic, but also the social, the psychological, the mental and other aspects of the pandemic, resulting across a wide swath, across a wide spectrum, from staying at home to the psychological impact of staying at home, to mental problems, to domestic issues, to dealing with children, and that also played an important role. In conclusion, what I would like to say is that situations like pandemic provide a unique experience when there is a fair degree of ground for collaboration between the state taking the lead and between the media and its various arms working together to disseminate credible, professional information for the common good, for the larger good, in a far more symbiotic and collaborative environment than our respective mandates otherwise ask us to do. And I think the experience of Jammu and Kashmir tells us that it has been done, it can be done. And as the paper by Professor Shamika Ravi also indicates the same, I think in a situation of crisis like this, it is time that we can work together. I thank you for this opportunity. I thank all of you for the opportunity that you have given me to listen to the views of so many experts. Thank you, Dr. Kadri.
Thank you so much, sir. I am really indebted to you for being with us. And I know you have been really, really busy, but you made time for us. And I also thank you for contextualizing the broader theme of this session with critical insights that you had to share, whether that's need for the right kind of agenda setting, surveillance, or asking hard questions, or also sharing the relevant examples from the ground zero, as well as proposing the reimagination of media landscape and public sphere between the government and different entities. Thank you so much, sir. We now have the paper presenters, as we have some scholars with us. The first one will be by Muhammad Zafar Iqbal. He's a research scholar at the Department of Electronic Media, Bangalore University, and his presentation is on the topic Information Dissemination Among Hyper-Local Community During Crisis, a study on disinformation flow during the COVID pandemic.
कहाँ है एक हमारा उसने एक्शन ली तो दो उसमें कोई टीचर फुजाइला
Ma'am, am I audible to you, ma'am? Ma'am?
Yes, please go ahead.
Myself, Zafar Iqbal. Currently, I am pursuing research at Department of Electronic Media under the supervision of Dr. Vahini Arvind. Today, I would like to present my research paper, which is on information dissemination among hyperlocal community during crisis. It is a study on misinformation flow during COVID-19 pandemic. To start with, if you look at how the pandemic has actually started, China's Wuhan city is considered the epicenter of the pandemic. It has really traumatized the health sector across the globe. Many countries around the globe are still struggling to recover from the effect of this deadly virus. And India is one among them, and is standing second to the United States of America in total confirmed cases. The potentiality of the virus, the poor execution of the containment strategy and policies are not the only cause in the sharp surge of cases, but also the infodemic has played a tremendous role in the spread of virus. If you look at what actually infodemic is, according to World Health Organization, too much information, including false or misleading information in digital and physical environment during a disease outbreak. It causes confusion and risk-taking behaviors that can harm health. It also leads to mistrust in health authorities and undermines the public health response. With growing digitization and expansion of social media and internet use, information can spread more rapidly, which can in turn amplify harmful messages. The present study is based on the dissemination of misinformation among hyperlocal communities, which are on social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Previous research shows that social media have become popular for rapid information exchange between members of the online community after the crisis event. My scope of the study is, since COVID-19 pandemic has affected India, a widespread panic has led to a plethora of misinformation among various hyperlocal communities on social media platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. The present study will throw light upon some of the misinformation messages circulated on social media during the two phases of the pandemic. The study, prevalence and source analysis of COVID-19 misinformation in 138 countries, published in SAGE International Federation of Library Association and Institution Journal. According to this study, of all the countries, India produced the largest amount of social media misinformation. This is because of country's highest internet penetration rate, increasing social media consumption and users' lack of media literacy. Hence, the present study will analyze the implication of misinformation on the COVID-19 crisis and the society as a whole. My objectives of the study, like the broad objectives of this study, is to undermine the misinformation content flow during the COVID-19. The research would find out the impact of misinformation on COVID-19 crisis, the ability of the people to find out the misinformation, to find out which social media platform has used the most to circulate misinformation, to understand the role of media literacy in identifying the misinformation. My research findings are, the study has found that people are actively seeking information related to health that rises from 60% during the pre-COVID-19 times to 92% during the pandemic. The study has also found that the majority of the respondents have passed the message which have content type video with text more than photo with text and audio clips. The study has found that spreading patterns of COVID-19 information on WhatsApp community groups is relatively very much high compared to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, even though the respondents seek information from these platforms as well. The study has found that the majority of the respondents, 96%, have believed and tried the quick remedial methods circulated among the hyperlocal communities to build immunity against the COVID-19 virus. The study has also found that the majority of the respondents were initially hesitant towards COVID-19 inoculation because of false information which has circulated among the groups. The study has also found that respondents' fake news detection capacity has increased by 12% during the pandemic. It has because the information consumption rate is positively correlated with fake news detection capacity. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zafar. I think you really presented your paper well, and I really look forward to seeing your paper being, published, and your thesis as well. All the best for it. We now move on to our next paper presenter. We have Muniswamy with us. He's a research scholar at Bangalore University, and he will present about impact of social media on women empowerment, a study among Bangalore urban women. Muniswamy.
Yes, ma'am. Can I share my screen, ma'am?
Yeah, please. We can see it.
Namaskar. Good evening to all. My name is Muniswamy, research scholar, Bangalore Department of Electronic Media, Bangalore University. Co-author Dr. T. Sripati, coordinator. My topic is impact of social media on women empowerment, a study among Bangalore urban women. Introduction. Due to technological advancement, social networking sites not only created a way for better communication across the globe, but they have played a major role in empowering women and encouraging them in civic participation. The status of women have improved over time with respect to education, work, rights, and many more. India is moving forward with great success and cannot ignore women empowerment. Easy access of social media and interest have created where raise our voice and create awareness among individuals and inform them to take decisions in their day-to-day life. My objective. The brand focus of the study is to find whether social media plays a role in women empowerment. To know the usage pattern of social media among urban women. To ensure the digital safe space that ensure women can access social media. The positive and negative aspects of social media participation. My methodology. The researcher used a quantitative approach method interview have connected among 5 social media experts and 25 social media users through questionnaire. Primary data and secondary data collection tools are used by applying our research method. Main findings. Due to technological advancement, women are directly impacted on development and reach their voice to be viewed globally. Ease access to internet and social media through smartphones help them to make more informed decisions to their day-to-day life. Women are getting more knowledge about their powers and rights to every woman in society holds and equal rights as men in every accept. Moreover, social media allows them increase their self-expressions and promote social change and imitation comes when dealing with literacy analysis. Majority of the response say that social media has shed light on women's issues which are not covered by mainstream media. Majority of response say that due to technological advancement, it directly impacts and development of women and reach their voice to be viewed globally. Majority of response say that women use internet to manage their day-to-day life and the smartphones have made them easy access to the internet and social media. Conclusion. Use of social media is seen as the only medium with good control and accessibility and fear felt by the people involved in the flood. Due to disrupted in media, social media such as Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. Many be regarded as the last opinion and order to interact with loved ones. When family members live in a distance and traditional media or down, social media allows them in interact with one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muniswamy. I think it is incredible to see research scholars presenting on these important topics, and both of you were really, really crisp and to the point. I think this will also kind of project Global Media Education Council in a manner wherein it's playing its role by not just giving space for us as media students and scholars to listen to eminent speakers, but also as scholars to present our work. So thank you so much for presenting your work. May I now request the session chair, Professor Mufti, to kindly sum up the session proceedings. And I know no one can do that better than you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Manasa. It has been an awesome session, an awesome evening. In this evening in Kashmir, we are about to have snow and we have no power, but it has been such an enlightening session that I think it'll be, enlighten my soul and my spirit for, I think, more than a week. So thank you so much to all the panelists, to all the presenters. I would like to thank Professor Shafai Kadwai, who very, very beautifully highlighted the paradox between reality and the presentation of facts. He highlighted the paradoxes also between rational truth and factual truth. He brought into focus the fact that corporate world and other actors have to set the agenda rather than the media. So now the ball is not in the hands of media, the ball is in the hands of the corporate world, the stakeholders, and the media is one of the stakeholders in the whole game. Thank you very much, Professor Kidwai, for a wonderful session. We would love to hear you more in sessions in Aligarh, and also we'd love to have you with us in our university. Professor Daniel Hollins, thank you so much. It was a holiday, but you found time for us, and it was the most enlightening session. You spoke about social marginalization, you spoke about journalistic professionalism, focusing on autonomy, on ethics, and the ideology of public service. You also, gave varied examples from North and South America and from Russia and from all the researches conducted by your eminent research scholars, focusing on the repressions, the authoritarianism, and the misinformation, all these things that are, rampant in media globally. Giving examples from every aspect of media, from every part of academia that you could lay your hands on. Thank you so much for a wonderful and an enlightening session. Then after that, we had Mr. Sagar Kaul. Yes, we do have a lot of fact checking. We have a lot of misinformation going on these days, but in a very, very crisp manner, Mr. Sagar Kaul highlighted the responsibility of fact checking in the media ecosystem in the aftermath, especially of the pandemic. He enumerated need for joining resources to do fact checking, not just at one level, but at multiple levels and at multiple places within the whole media ecosystem. Thank you very much, Mr. Sagar Kaul. Mr. Kansal, we've till now heard about you only in the news. Today, it was for the first time we saw you presenting, and we came to know that it is not only administrators who are just administrators. Administrators are also people of high acumen. You have stressed the age-old journey. Your stress on the fact that there needs to be a marriage between age-old journalism and the institution of truth. This is rightly so a very, very true reality of today. You highlighted the need for credibility, the need to question the state, whereas given the situation we are living in the contemporary times, where the right wing, the left wing, the authoritarian regimes, and the state and the non-state actors that are working in the present political scenario, it is very difficult to have a very democratic democratic scenario in the media, which we are seeing a lot less than it has always been. But it is practically possible. And your session, your lecture was very, very well informed and looked at the trends in media content. You stressed on a collaborative ecosystem like Mr. Sagar Kaul. Thank you very much for a very, very highlighting and a very, very enlightening session. We go back to the research scholars. I think this is a responsibility for all of us to always have with us young scholars who give us yet another view into the world of academia and how academia is developing. Zafar Iqbal, in a very short session, in a very short presentation, very crisply highlighted the role of misinformation in hyperlocal communities. He focused on the lack of media literacy and the colossal misinformation, especially during the pandemic in the Indian nation state, with very pertinent examples focusing on all the aspects of the pandemic. After that, we had Munnaswamy, who presented his work on the impact of social media on women empowerment in Bangalore. But yes, empowerment for urban women. I'm sure yet another scholar, or I would love to do something on how disempowerment, how disempowered our women are in the urban, in the rural sector as well as the urban sector. And I think I would love to do a research on this aspect. Thank you very much, Zafar Iqbal. Thank you very much, Munnaswamy. And my thanks to the global communication community for giving us this opportunity for this vibrant and enthusiastic evening session. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for a very, very well moderated session. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to be part of this whole system. Thank you very much to all the participants who graced this occasion. And thank you very much to the organization. And thank you, Vanessa, once more.
Thank you so much. I think you beautifully summed up the entire session, and you brought out the real crux and insights that kind of define today's session, and the way you talked about all the different topics that were presented and how you handled it. We are getting some chats as well. We're talking about this session. So before we wind up, let me propose a vote of thanks again. I'm really, really grateful to everyone who joined, all the eminent speakers who we had with us today. Right from the beginning, we had Professor Shafiq Adwai, the Lifetime Achievement Awardee, Professor Daniel Holland, keynote speaker, Sri Rohit Kansal, our chief guest. We had Mr. Sagar Kaul, our corporate speaker, Professor Sabia Mufti, the session chair, Professor Shahid Rasool, who's the vice president of GMEC, our research scholars, Mr. Zafar Iqbal and Mr. Munnaswamy. I believe that sessions like these are critical in creating, those critical linkages across media education and research, and all of us are kind of brought together through this virtual platform. I thank you all again. I thank all the attendees who were there present with us, and we look forward to having them again tomorrow as we have the next session of the Global Communication Education Conclave. Thank you so much.